there are times your life is so good and the times when you think everything is falling apart. When you are at the bottom of that beat, you just need to hunker down. Know that if you hunker down, the next beat is going to be up.
Hi guys, this is Brad Verma and I'm here today with a very special guest. He is an entrepreneur that is looking to solve major challenges in the world through innovation. He's founded several companies including Moon Express, Viome, InfoSpace, and also Blue Dot and Intellis. And he's won several awards including the Albert Einstein Medal. He's won awards for being the top 50 philanthropist in the world in 2018. And he's also won the Lifetime Achievement Award. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome none other than Mr. Naveen Jain himself.
Brad, what a pleasure to meet you.
Thank you so much for coming today.
Well, looking forward to it.
So yeah, today, I wanted to first focus on a little bit about your book first. I read the book and it was such an inspiring book. I just loved how motivating and inspiring and thought-provoking it is, especially for the younger generation. It has so many ideas that you can take from that book.
So what did you learn?
For me personally, what I learned is that never take anything for granted. Like, doesn't matter how much research or expertise has been done in any particular field, you can challenge the status quo of anything and try to think outside the box. Because it's one thing to just have some expertise in one thing, and I think in the book that you mentioned that a lot of the experts, you don't want to necessarily talk to them to develop the same field. You want to look at somebody else who's outside that field. So for me, that's a total game changer, because just because somebody is an expert at something doesn't mean that that's the end of that field. And so I wanted to actually bring Devi to the show just very quickly. And she had a really interesting question.
So Devi's your daughter?
Devi's my daughter. She's here today. She's skipping school just for a few hours. She wanted to come specially to meet you, but also to ask this question. I think it's very relevant because your book should really be a book that all schools should adopt, so that children are exposed to different mindset rather than just knowing that, okay, this is a certain way to become an entrepreneur. There's so many different ways and to challenge the status quo.
Well, one of the things that I find in the education system is that it has been our whole education system is to some extent is imparting the skills. And the whole idea of once you learn certain skill, like in the industrial era, you could use those skills for the rest of your life. We live in this world of exponential technologies. That means any skill that you learn, by the time you graduate, the skill has become obsolete. Right. So you have to rethink the education system about learning to learn, learning to solve problems, and most problems tend to be multidisciplinary rather than unidisciplinary. So that means you have to have a broader exposure to a lot of things rather than just become an expert in one thing. The second thing that I really find more fascinating is that as parents or as teachers, we always think that our job is to take these kids to the water and make them drink, right?
Right.
And I really feel the right approach is to not make them drink anything, but to make them thirsty. If you can make someone thirsty, they will find their own water and they will drink it. So how do you make someone thirsty? Is by allowing them to be intellectually curious. If you can simply create intellectual curiosity in anyone, that becomes the lifelong thirst for knowledge, lifelong thirst to ask the question, what if? Right? So one of the things we did very, for our children was, anytime they say, oh, that will never work, and my question was, what if that was possible? Now imagine. So imagine is a word that's probably one of the most powerful word in their language.
Sure.
When I tell you and say, Brad, imagine, what happens is all your preconceived ideas go to the side and you're now willing to listen to the word that I want you to imagine. And if I can vividly create the image that I want you to imagine, it starts to become real. Because your brain starts to feel, oh my God, that's happening.
Sure.
And once you start to believe something is possible, then it becomes possible. Because as long as you believe something is impossible, it becomes impossible for you and no one else.
Right.
Right. So the idea of the thought process is to be able to imagine a world. Right. So when I started my most recent company, Vyome, our whole thought was imagine a world where being sick is a choice. Now imagine your grandmother will never have to walk with a walker. Imagine your loved ones never had to die from cancer. Imagine a world where no one ever has a dementia or diabetes, obesity, depression, losing so many great talent to depression. It doesn't have to happen. None of these diseases we call chronic diseases these are all lifestyle choices. You're not born with them. You're not supposed to get them until you make the wrong choices the way you live. What if
Yes.
you knew exactly what is right for you and you still decide not to do that? That's what I mean by imagine a world where being sick is a choice. That means it's your choice. If I tell you don't eat spinach or don't eat broccoli and say, I'm going to eat it because that's what I want to do, then that's your choice.
Right.
And then you get sick, you can't say, oh my
Didn't
God,
know.
it's
Right.
a bad luck. It's not a bad luck, it's the bad choices, right?
Sure.
So coming back to the question that you asked me, the education system should be about creating intellectually curious kids, giving them the thought process of asking, what if it is actually possible? So anytime someone says, oh, this is how we should do this, and you ask the question, you say, what if there was a different way? What if this didn't need to be, it is not even needed? So education system should be about teaching children to ask the right questions. Some reasons, whether we as parents, as teacher, or even as an entrepreneur, we believe what makes us good at what we are is to have the right answers. In fact, I believe as an entrepreneur, my job is not to have the right answer. My job is to actually ask the right questions. Now, and asking the right question really becomes the key to what problem you're solving. So let me give you a couple of examples because I really think, so as you know, I have another company going to the moon.
Yes.
And when we were saying that, hey, let's create a multiplanetary society where people could live on planets other than planet Earth. And we could live on the moon, and we could live on the Mars, and we could live anywhere beyond. And everyone kept saying, that's great, but how will you ever grow the food on the moon? And if you keep asking the question how to grow the food on the moon,
Right.
What is the solution? The solution is to find a way to grow the food on the moon.
Yeah, you got to find water,
Whatever
nutrients
that
and all
is,
this. Yeah.
Right. The only thing you can do is to find a way to grow the food on the moon. What if you ask slightly different question? Why do we eat food?
Get energy, right?
Right. My point is, if you ask that question, why we eat food, now the solutions are many. We eat food because we need energy and we need nutrition. What if we can get energy some other way? What if we can get energy from radiation? What if we can get energy from photosynthesis, like plants do? What are the nutrients we need? We need hydrogen, we need oxygen, we need nitrogen. If there is a water, we already have the hydrogen and oxygen. So the only thing we need to do is now figure out a way to get nitrogen or find nitrogen. And now suddenly the solutions are very different than to grow the food on the moon. And that becomes the trick, is almost everything you do, ask yourself, what if it's not needed? What if there is a different way of solving that problem?
Sure.
And this technique applies to almost everything. And we can talk about, when we are solving a problem, we have to ask yourself, is that really the symptom of the problem? Or is it really the root cause of the problem? Right? Why is this problem even exist? So let me give you an example of that.
Sure.
So for example, everyone believes that lack of fresh water is one of the biggest problems on planet Earth, because there are many, many people around the world, especially in Africa and other countries, where lack of fresh water causes so many diseases.
Right.
And everyone believes that if we can find a way to get them a fresh water, life will get really good. Now, if you go out there and say, okay, as an entrepreneur, I'm going to solve that problem. I'm going to come up with a nano filter to desalinize. I'm going to come up with a way to essentially get them a fresh water. And you really start to look at that problem. Until someone comes along and says, wait a sec, where is all this water going? Why is there a lack of fresh water? And very quickly you realize that there is a lack of fresh water because majority of the fresh water is used for agriculture. And you say, oh, that is now I understand. I'm going to go out and create aquaponic agriculture, aeroponic agriculture. I'm going to find a way to maybe use lightly salted water so we don't use all that fresh water for agriculture. And you feel really, really good that you solved the problem.
Right.
Until you ask, wait a sec, do we really need all this agriculture? Why do we have all this agriculture? And the answer is, majority of the agriculture is used to feed the cattle. Now, suddenly you realize, oh, if we don't need the cattle, then we have all this agriculture to feed twice as many people now.
Sure.
So when people say, how are we going to do anything when we have 20 billion people? We just solve right there.
Right.
If you don't need the cattle, and people say, well, we want to eat meat. In that case, what if you can do exactly what nature does? Take a stem cell of a cow.
Right.
And you can grow just the muscle tissues because you don't eat the eyes, you don't eat the ears, you don't eat all this stuff. Why grow them? Why not simply grow the muscle tissues that you want in the biofactories and you have all the beef you want, you can have all the chicken legs you want, you can have frog legs, you can have whatever you want. And
right.
You grow them without ever needing a single piece of agriculture. Now, a couple of things happen. You do a massive service to the environment because the cattle do the most amount of damage for the planet Earth. The methane gas they produce, it is probably what causes the ozone layer depletion. So if you if you're really, really worried about the planet and the environment, the best thing you can do is not to drive a Tesla, but to actually stop eating meat one day a week. If you just do that, you will do more for this environment than you would ever do driving a Prius or a Tesla. So I always tell people, I'm a vegetarian. I drive a Ferrari. I'm doing more for the environment than you'll ever do.
I love that. No, absolutely. I think that's a great way to think rather than trying to solve, look at the symptoms. You have to look at what are the real problems, right? So I wanted to just quickly bring Devi on to just ask, she has this burning question in her mind.
Go for
I
it.
give her a chance. Do you want to come here?
Come here, Devi.
Yeah, come.
Get on our show. Devi, welcome to Dad's show.
Yeah, welcome to the American Dream. And what's your question?
Come.
Here.
You can be on the camera shot here. Come on.
So my goal is that when I'm 17, I want to become a multimillionaire or a billionaire. So I've been hearing you in the car saying, think crazy and, imagine and everything. So then I started thinking I'm going to start thinking big because my friends, they sometimes make fun of me like, that's never going to happen. And so I always get down and I always give up. So how do you keep your mind to that goal and not, whenever you fail, not give up?
Well, so first of all, your premise is wrong premise. If you ever start with a premise of making money, the chance of you making money is close to zero. Right? So if you focus on making money, you will never actually succeed in life. To succeed in life, you have to focus on solving the problem. So if your goal is to make money, then you are chasing the wrong thing. The way making money is a byproduct of doing the things that actually help people. So if you say, what if I can solve a problem that impacts a billion people, 100 million people? That's how you create a $100 billion company. So if you want to be a millionaire or billionaire, if you want to be a billionaire, solve a $10 billion problem. You're a billionaire right there. But you got to find what is that problem that you want to solve. And it's not about, I am passionate about that. Passion is for losers. You need to be so obsessed that you go to sleep thinking about it, you wake up, jump out of the bed thinking about it, and when you find something like that, that's the problem you dedicate your life to solving, and when you solve that problem, money will follow. Money never comes because you chase it, right? Money comes when you're doing things that help lots and lots of people, right? When you should never ever let your friends tell you what is possible and what's not possible. Don't surround yourself with anyone who doubts you, who brings you down. You only surround yourself with the people who uplift you, people who want you to succeed in life, people who believe in you. So first thing is get rid of everyone. Get rid of everyone who doubts what is not possible. When someone says it will never happen, all they're saying is, I can't do it. Doesn't mean you can't do it, right? So when someone tells you that will never happen, you say, oh, I understand, you will never do that, right? And that's really what they're saying is, I am unable to do that, but Devi, you are a different person, you can do that. If every entrepreneur, I can tell you that there are thousands and millions of people who will tell them it can't be done. And those are the people who go and say, great, if everyone believes it can't be done, that means I'm the only one who's trying to solve this problem. I got a whole field to myself. And that means when it solves the problem, I own the market, right? So think, when I say really big, think about a problem that helps, that will potentially help 1 billion people. And if you do so, you will create a massive company. All right?
Wow, that's a
Thank
great
you.
answer.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. So, one of the things that I think a lot of the viewers don't know about is, your company Moon Express is the only company in the world that has permission to go outside the orbit Earth and actually land on the moon. And I wanted to just touch base a little bit about that and share with our viewers what is the initiative, why do we need to go to the moon, and what is the whole purpose for this company?
So, going to the moon is not just about physically going to the moon. Going to the moon is symbolic of what individuals and a small group are capable of doing.
Sure.
Now, it used to be only the superpowers could do that. I mean, there are only 3 superpowers that have ever landed on the moon successfully: US, Russia, and China.
Right.
If you believe an individual or a small group of people can land on the moon that and become the 4th superpower, that shows what is possible. If those entrepreneurs are capable of doing and becoming a 4th superpower, do we really need the superpowers to solve the problems for the humanity? Would that be if you're looking at a crisis of healthcare where we are constantly suffering from these chronic diseases, is that the problem that's going to be solved by Obamacare or Trump care or Putin care?
Right.
Is going to be solved by an entrepreneur thinking enough is enough. We're going to go out and solve this problem. Okay. How do we create the abundance of energy? It is good. We live on this planet where every 90 minutes more energy falls on this planet just from the sun than we use in the whole year.
Right.
It is simply the matter of conversion, right? This problem is no different when you go back few decades ago. The most precious metal on planet Earth was aluminium.
Right.
And even though it was in abundance, it was always in the form of bauxite. To extract aluminium from the bauxite was very difficult. And that's why it was more expensive than gold or silver or anything else. If you look at the tip of the Washington Monument, it's aluminium. Just to show the Britishers, we are rich, we know what we are doing.
Sure.
Now, what happened? Decades later, a technology called electrolysis came about that made it so easy to extract that metal. And now it is so cheap we throw it away.
Right.
Now, what is the electrolysis of the solar energy? That will convert the solar energy into usable form. And when that happens, energy will become completely free. And if it becomes similar to the aluminium where it becomes completely free, now imagine what happens. When you have free energy, you can have literally abundance of fresh water, because you can even distill the dirtiest water. You can desalinize anything you want because energy is free.
Right.
When you have free energy, free water, could you have abundance of food? Right?
Yeah.
So my point is, you start to think and you say, oh my God, who is going to do that? Is that today the clean energy is not coming because we signed the Kyoto Treaty or we signed the Paris Treaty. It's happening because some entrepreneur decided that that's what they're going to do. So imagine, Elon, a decade ago said, I'm going to go out and build an electric car. And people say, there hasn't been a car company created in decades, let alone an electric car company. That will never work. And today that car company is worth more than Ford and GM.
Right.
So what is it? If one entrepreneur decided they're going to go do that, creates a solar, right? And suddenly every car company is now struggling trying to bring electric. Guess what's happening? Whether the Tesla survives as a company or not doesn't matter. The humanity has now moved forward at a point of no return. That means now we're going to have a non-fossil fuel cars. Whether the car, I'm not talking about whether Tesla is a great investment or not. Tesla may die.
Right.
But the point is, the movement that it created will never die. The genie is out of the bottle.
Right.
And that's what entrepreneurs do. That even so today, when I am focused on making chronic diseases optional, I'll tell you a little bit more about what we're doing.
Right.
But the fact is, even if we fail as a company, we would have moved forward the science and the technology and the mission far enough that somebody's going to stand on our shoulder, take it across the finish line.
Sure.
And it doesn't matter. The humanity has eliminated chronic diseases, and that's what I focus on. And while we are on that journey,
Sure.
I'm not focused on is a multi-trillion-dollar market. I'm focused on helping 1 billion people is what is going to allow us to create a multi-trillion-dollar company.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, I myself, I was so inspired when I've seen you 2 times before at the Real Estate Expo, and every time you've spoken about the biome, and I myself did the testing because I wanted to know, hey, what's going on with my body so that I can make better decisions that will help me to be at my peak performance,
Yes.
right? I mean, you don't want to focus so much on disease, but my main goal in life is to how do I be at my peak every day?
Absolutely correct.
Right?
Yeah.
And so that's great that, people will have that option.
Yes.
To know what's good for them, what's not good, and then make the choices, right? So let's just switch a little bit. I wanted to, talk a little bit about the moon, but also know what your thoughts are about real estate and how the changes that are coming about in the technology, in a lot of the stuff that we're seeing, the disruptions. How do you see the real estate industry changing and the way people live?
The real estate is an asset. And the only reason it has value is because somehow people have been made to believe that it is scarce. The minute you believe that things are not scarce, they lose value. And people say, no, that can never happen because human beings are so greedy, it doesn't matter how much we have, we will always want more. Until you remind them, what is really thing we don't value today is air and oxygen. We can have people, 50,000 people sitting in a stadium. We never slap the guy next to us and say, hey, you're breathing my air. We believe it is so much in abundance.
Right.
Everyone can breathe. We can all be in this room. We are all breathing and no one feels, oh my God, it's mine, it's yours.
Right.
Because it's in abundance. Now imagine if real estate was the next air. It is so abundant that everyone can have as much as they want. They can breathe. Nobody says, hey, you're taking a deep breath. You're not allowed to take a deep breath. You can say, breathe as much as you want. You want to take an even more deeper breath, go for it, right?
Sure.
It's in abundance, right?
Sure.
And the reason for that is, today we believe the value in real estate is in Manhattan and San Francisco, where all these great companies are there and people have to be there close to the work because they want that job.
Right.
Now, imagine the future where we are working in a virtual office. It makes no difference that we all sitting in this room, whether we are physically here or virtually here, no one will know the difference. When the virtual reality becomes so good that is same as a physical reality, then no one knows where we are physically. In fact, one would argue that we already live in this virtual world. There is no reality. I mean,
it's what our senses perceive, right?
that's right. Not only what our sensors perceive, our sensors are designed not to see the reality. If we saw the reality...
That is so deep.
No, seriously. Humans evolved not to see the reality. If we saw the reality, we would die because it's so complex. Fact is, we don't hear half the sounds that are happening. We don't see half the things that are happening. Remember, the amount of light wavelength that we can see are so small. We don't see infrared. We don't see ultraviolet. So there are all these things here. If I could see more wavelength of light and I say, hey, I'm seeing someone standing here, the first reaction you is, since you can't see, oh my God, this guy has lost his mind. What is he seeing?
Right.
If I tell you that I can now, let's just see my mind is enhanced and I can hear the short wave or the FM, and I'm listening to the song, the Taylor Swift playing right here, and I say, Brad, aren't you listening to Taylor Swift? You're gonna say, oh my God, this guy has gone totally cuckoo. There is no song here. And you put the radio and you can hear the song. So where is the song coming from? It's already here.
Right.
So my point is, human sensors are designed for us to only see for survival and procreation and nothing else. In fact, if we see a lot, because depending on, I'm only seeing a physical body here. There are under physical body, there is nitrogen there is oxygen. I mean, literally, it is just bunch of atoms all put together like a hologram.
Right.
But I don't see everything. I don't see your heartbeat. I don't see anything going on inside you, because it doesn't matter to me from a survival perspective. All I want to know is, are you a threat to me or are you a friend to me? Friend or a foe?
Sure.
Right? Am I going to be killed or am I going to kill this one? Are you my lunch or am I your lunch? I mean, that's literally what's going on here.
Right. That's the primal brain.
That's all. So my point is, we're not supposed to see reality. Reality is too complex. So in fact, there is a great book, if you want to read Don Hoffman's book called The Case Against Reality.
Okay.
And it just shows that human brain is designed, the human sensors are designed for fitness to survive and procreate and not to see the reality. In fact, but my point I'm trying to make is that we already are living in this virtual world where what we see is simply through the interface. So just like today, when you look at the computer and there is an icon that has your email, does mean that your email is sitting there? Does it mean it's right rectangular? That's your email is right and rectangular? Is it blue in color because the icon is blue? Or is it right there in a computer, when you click on it, it just opens it?
Right.
It is somewhere in the diodes and the transistors and electrodes. If you saw that reality, you will never be able to use your email again.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It is sitting somewhere in some electrical signal, some hard drive where it is being activated. And if you saw that reality, you will never be able to even figure out what to do with that email. They created a desktop interface. So you click, you see, you type, something happens, and it shows. You don't see the reality.
Right.
That's the world we live in. All I see is these icons. And these icons are created by us.
Right.
These icons may not exist. It's simply the desktop interface.
So do you see a world where people are going to be living more so in the spaces that are not being utilized right now? And
but it's forget it, just the space on Earth. There's no doubt. I mean, if you look at the planet Earth, there's nothing special about it. In fact, even if you just look at our galaxy, our solar system is on the side. It's not even the center of our galaxy. It's sitting on the side. Our solar, not only the planet Earth, is a tiny blue dot in our solar system. Our solar system is a tiny dot somewhere in our galaxy. Our galaxy is a tiny dot somewhere in this universe. And our universe may be a tiny dot in this multiverse.
right.
Where is that scarcity of where we can live? Right?
Yeah.
We could be on some multiverse living somewhere and physically being projected here. Right? So we have no idea what reality is. So when you talk about the real estate, there is abundance of place we could all be living in. So where is the value for that? Right?
Not only on Earth, but also
Anywhere.
in different galaxies.
Yeah. Right? So coming back to the things that it is about thinking differently. It's about imagining a different way or different world, and then going out and trying to solve that problem. And coming back to what you mentioned about that, you and I chatted about at the Real World Expo was about why did I focus on solving this problem, right? Because imagine we are probably spending more money on healthcare now than we ever did. So more money we spend on healthcare, more people are getting sicker. What is the problem here? That today almost everyone either are suffering from one or more chronic diseases or know someone who is suffering from chronic diseases. And when I say chronic diseases, I mean obesity, diabetes, autoimmune diseases, depression, anxiety, ADHD, cancer, Alzheimer, autism. I mean, these are all chronic diseases. We are not born with these diseases. Then why is it that we start to develop these diseases? And I want to just, before I go and describe why in more detail, because it is a fundamental concept of, do people really have to develop these chronic diseases? And our focus has always been in this, DNA, that our human genes, we have the genes that we get from our mom and dad. And what surprises to me is that are focused on our DNA is unique to us, and that is what causes, and sometimes you get a bad luck of having a bad genes and you develop these diseases. Well, here's what I'm trying to point out. Your DNA, actually your genes don't change when you develop these diseases. So think about it for a second. I have genes that you say exist when I'm born.
Right.
I live my life, and somewhere along the lines I gain 50 pounds. My DNA has not changed. Then I become depressed. My DNA still hasn't changed. Now I get diabetes. My DNA still hasn't changed. And I got autoimmune disease. My DNA still hasn't changed. So if DNA hasn't changed, how can you possibly tell me that it is the cause of all these diseases?
So the DNA remains constant, even though you may have developed all these different
So why
disorders.
is it? How can DNA be responsible for it if it's not even changing? Because I didn't have the disease before, and suddenly I get the disease and my DNA hasn't changed. So how can you blame it?
So how do the doctors then tell you that because your mom or your dad had this issue, that why is that?
So what really is changing along the lines are our gene expressions. So what is being expressed is constantly changing. And that means is that if we can understand what genes are being expressed, we can find out whether you're going to develop the disease or not what genes you have. So now let me give you a different example. Every part of our body is identical DNA, right?
Okay.
You can take
Yes.
take your hair and do a DNA. It's the same as your skin, your teeth, your
Right.
gums, your lungs, your kidney, everything.
Right.
Then why is it that you don't have the teeth growing on your head and hair growing in your mouth? Same DNA. What is changing? Is some genes are not expressed and
Right.
other genes are expressed that make them hair or teeth or something else.
Right.
So ultimately what we become, everything becomes on what genes are expressed, not what genes we have.
Okay,
Right.
so we have a choice there.
We have a choice. And these, now the second part is very interesting. So this is just human DNA.
Right.
It turns out that we as humans, the genes that we get from our mom and dad only account for about 22,000 genes.
And that's how much percentage?
That's so now to get a percentage. Our body, just inside our gut, we have 40 trillion microbes living in our gut. 40 trillion microbes living in our gut. And people wonder what the 40 trillion looks like. Now take all the human beings on planet Earth, and let's assume we had 5,000 planet Earths, and take all those human beings and put them inside each one of us. So all human beings in 5,000 Earth combined live in each inside of us, right? These guys produce about 2 million to 20 million genes. That means when we are so proud of who we are, we are at best 1% human. 99% of all of our genes that are expressed in our body are not ours, they're foreigners. And these are the things that actually make us healthy or sick. So now,
These tiny little
organisms are living in our gut. How do they come about? The first time when the baby is born, going through the birth canal, it gets seeded by these mother's microbiome. In fact, even during pregnancy, mother's microbiome impacts the child's health. So what is happening on mom's gut changes what the baby is going to be in the health-wise. When the baby have a C-section versus a natural birth, because the birth canal is where the first exposure is, and if you end up getting a C-section, you deprive the baby of that microbial exposure. In fact, you get a skin microbiome, which is why a lot of the kids who are born from C-section have allergies, eczema, and all kinds of diseases. After that, it is the environment, the air we breathe, but most importantly, the food we eat. Every food we eat, essentially, you pop in the thing, gets through this big donut canal. It goes to our gut,
Right.
and depending on what food we are eating, we are feeding certain set of organisms to produce certain things. When we're eating a different food, the different organisms are digesting them and producing different things. And what they produce, in turn, are either nutrients that our body needs or the toxins that cause the inflammation. Right? So each one of us as humans share 99.9% the same genes that we get from mom and dad.
Okay.
But when it comes to our microbes in our gut, less than 5% same. That means we are so different. And that is the reason, if you go back We think we invented the science of the gut microbiome and how food changes what we are. 2,500 years ago, a Greek doctor named Hippocrates, you know what he said? All diseases begin in the gut.
Okay.
And then someone said, one man's food is another man's poison. And Hippocrates says, let food be thy medicine, let thy medicine be the food. Think about that for a second.
Sure.
They knew that there is no such thing as universal healthy food. A food that's good for you, it actually could be harming me. So for me, I did my biome test, and it says, based on what's happening inside your gut, and by the way, we are the only company in the universe, and I can definitely know on the planet Earth, but there's nobody who has come back to me and said, hey, I'm in Mars here, and I got a company here that does the same thing. There is no company in the universe that I'm aware of that actually measures the gene expression, finds out what your microbes are producing. No company in the world figures out what these microbes are producing, because what they are producing is what changes our health. And I'll come back and how we got to that, because that was asking a different question. That's how we solve this problem, right? So while we know if you today, you can Google and find out depression and microbiome, it will say you depression is caused by the gut microbiome. Anxiety and microbiome. Parkinson's starts in the gut 15 years before you get the disease.
Wow.
Alzheimer, many types of cancer, autoimmune diseases, diabetes, obesity, all these chronic diseases start in the gut. And more than that, even the cure for these diseases like cancer, how effective it is depends on your gut microbiome, because your immune system is controlled by, modulated by our gut microbiome.
So are you saying that all the major diseases that we have is actually caused by the food that we take in our body?
Yes, and what these microbes are doing, right? So what these microbes are producing. So what we do is looking at what they are producing, and then for me, when I did the test, it told me not to eat apple. And then it tells me why. Don't eat apple, Mr. Jain, because you have apple chlorhexidine leaf virus. And if you keep eating apple, you're feeding that virus that's causing you harm. It says don't eat broccoli or cabbage or Brussels sprout, which I thought were really healthy food.
Right.
And it says that don't eat them because for me, I'm producing way too much sulfide that is causing inflammation, and all these food have very high sulfate. And if you eat these foods, it's going to produce even more sulfide that's going to cause even more harm. Now, it tells me not to eat spinach. And I was absolutely convinced, since Popeye told me that spinach is good for you, that spinach has got to be good for you.
Yeah.
It turns out Popeye was not a scientist, right? Spinach is really bad for me because I cannot digest oxalic acids. My oxalate mechanism is very poor. So when I eat food that have very high oxalic acid like spinach, only thing I'm doing is harming my body.
But can you change the microbes though?
So now what happens is, now when you start to change your diet, things that were good for me today may not stay good for me later, right? So when I changed my diet, I started to eat more prebiotic, more probiotic, had more polyphenols, had some digestive enzymes. Suddenly, over next 4 months later, my microbes, what they're producing changed. So things that used to be really avoid, I was eating so many lentils, it say avoid lentils. I stopped eating lentils, I come back and say lentil is now my superfood, eat as much as I want.
Okay.
Because now my microbes have adjusted for that, right? And the idea is over time they get balanced, but you still have to recheck your microbes at least once a year, if not a couple of times a year, to keep the thing balanced. Like people say, how often do I test? It's like, how often do you clean your car? How often do you work out?
Sure.
It's something, if you don't, you essentially end up in the repair shop. For humans it's called emergency room, right? You don't want to get up into the repair shop called
Absolutely.
emergency room.
No.
And that is literally, so heart diseases are caused not by the food, it's what we think is fat. It is the fat produced by our microbiome that causes the heart diseases, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, my point is, the reason we came to start Viome was, when I was looking at this problem, I read tens of thousands of research papers. And it turns out every research paper was talking about how these chronic diseases are caused by gut microbiome. And I said, oh my God, this is so cool. And then it occurred to me, oh my God, I'm the biggest fool. If this thing is really so obvious and there are 10 other companies doing the microbiome testing, why is this problem not solved? And I thought I was really not understanding it correctly because I'm not an expert here. Then it occurred to me, what questions are they asking? And it turns out every microbiome company was asking the same wrong question. I want to know every organism that's inside the people's gut. Because if I knew what organisms are there, somehow they thought they'll solve the problem.
Right.
And it occurred to me that's the wrong question. The right question is not who is there, right question is what are they producing? Because, and the reason is me being naive, I thought, oh, these organisms are no different than human beings. They could be thousands of different people with different names producing exactly the same thing, doing exactly the same thing. So when you look at two people with diabetes, they may have completely different organism, but producing the same thing that causes diabetes, just like there could be Brad, there could be Paul, there could be John, they could all be doing exactly the same thing. So we need to focus on what they're doing. But here was a more interesting thing. I thought even the same organism could be producing different things in different people's environment, because what's happening inside my gut is a totally different environment than your gut. So same organisms could be doing different things. And now think of me as a human being. So I always go back to the relate, right? I'm saying me as a person, when I'm at work, I'm an entrepreneur. When I'm at home, I'm a dishwasher. What changed? Am I a dishwasher or an entrepreneur? Only thing that changed is the environment.
Sure.
Right? So now, what if these organisms are the same way? When they are inside your gut, maybe producing something that's good for you, in my gut, they're producing something that's bad for me. Right?
Oh.
So that, and it turns out, by the way, all these were simply the intuition because I was thinking very naive. Turns out now we have a science to show exactly that the same organism can produce something completely different toxin in one person's body and completely something that's helpful to another person's body. There could be thousands of different things that produce the same thing. Now, having analyzed hundreds of thousands of people, we can now predict just by looking at your gut that you have depression, diabetes, obesity, IBS. Just by looking at your microbiome in your mouth saliva, we can tell you have oral cancer with 90% accuracy. We published a paper that can show that if you eat the same food, the two people eat exactly the same slice of bread, one of them have a massive glucose response and other will have none. And we knew that intuitively before, that some people can eat bread all day, never get fat.
I know. You go to France and they're like people eating bread and cheese.
And guess what happens? Some people smell bread and they get fat.
Exactly. You're right.
What was it? It was actually their gut microbiome. Right?
Got it.
And we have completely ignored this massive organ that produces 99% of all of our genes, and doctors completely ignore it. They're not taught about it. In fact, there is no doctor that is taught about nutrition. When you go to a medical school, you're simply taught if there is a ill, there is a pill. Right? That means your only job is to prescribe a drug for every symptom.
Right.
You may as well become a salesperson for a pharma company because that's all you are. And pharmaceutical companies love chronic diseases. Chronic disease means what? A lifetime subscriber.
Yeah.
They will never cure it. They'll simply manage the symptoms so you take the drugs for the rest of the life. You have a lifetime subscriber. They probably have a button. Oh, you're young, you got diabetes, ka-ching! Lifetime subscriber.
Yes, absolutely.
Right? Imagine if you can solve that. Right? So not only that, we in fact just announced now that we are working with a GSK to develop vaccines to prevent chronic diseases. Think for a second. Someday we may have a vaccine for diabetes, obesity, depression, autoimmune diseases, breast cancer, right? Colorectal cancer, that you don't develop these diseases. Right? So even though you may be eating wrong, you can still prevent yourself from having that. Wouldn't that be a day where we don't have to worry about all this? Until then, we tell you what is happening inside the gut and what you should do and what you should not do and why. And we give you that choice. And if you follow, you stay healthy. And if you decide, I don't really care, that's why we say being sick is a choice.
That's amazing. Will it also help people to maybe not age as faster?
Actually, aging is a chronic disease.
Really?
I mean, think about it. Why is it that we develop wrinkles? Why is it that we get age? It is simply a chronic disease. Over time, things are constantly degrading. And if we can stop them from degrading, which is oxidative stress, right? It is the mitochondrial biogenesis, all the stuff that's causing the aging, if we can prevent that, there is no reason why we could not live for a long, long time. And I would argue as long as we want. I mean, 100 years ago, people used to die when they were 22 years old. Now we die at 80.
Right.
Where is that limit? Is it 150? Is it 300? Is it 3,000? Is it 30,000? Is it 30 million? What is the limit that we could live up to? The answer is unlimited. And you could argue someday, who is we that needs to live, right? We change our knees, are we still the same person? Yeah. If we change our shoulder, we're the same person. We change our hip, are we the same person? We change our heart, are we the same person? And the answer is, what makes us who we are is our memories and our experiences. What if we can take our memories and experiences and constantly transfer to a new body? Are we the same person? And us, well, someday we can discuss.
That's a really interesting topic. No, that's amazing. I just read your book and I was so inspired by moonshots. And one of the chapters talks about how to become a successful entrepreneur. And I thought it would be really neat for a lot of the viewers who are striving so hard to do so many different things in the industries. Yeah. What are some of the principles or tactics that they can use to become successful at what they're doing? If you could enlighten us.
Well, actually, I'm going to turn around and ask you that. Since you read the book and you were inspired, why don't you look in the camera and say, what is it that you learned that you think other people could learn? And if when you get it wrong, I'll tell you.
So what I learned personally is, first of all, is to challenge the status quo. Don't assume anything. Just because somebody has done something and they've done really well, don't just feel that is it, that it cannot be progressed any further. In fact, a lot of the times what happens is the experts can only reach a certain point, and then you need somebody else from outside the industry that can take it to the next level, right? So for me, that just shows that just because something has been done doesn't mean that that's it. You can make it so much better, and you don't have to be from that same field. That's the beauty of it. That, Naveen is like a living example. I'm just amazed at how many different fields and industries he's put his mind to, and every time he's been so successful. So, that just shows that you don't have to necessarily be a doctor to really get into genes, right? And you don't have to be an engineer to, really get into technology and all that stuff. So, so that's one thing. Second thing I learned is, in order to be successful at anything, you need to first have that mindset that no matter what, you're going to make it happen, right? Just the resiliency. And I think you said it very beautifully that in order to attain big success, you have to solve big problems. Yes. Don't run after the money, and like you were just telling to Devi. So figure out what are those big problems that you can solve, those challenges. And if you can do that, then the success will come to you automatically, right?
And mindset of abundance rather than mindset of scarcity.
Oh, I love that one chapter where you talk about how people look at sustainability and they're always trying to promote sustainability. And there's nothing wrong with sustainability. I love that chapter because it was mind-opening for me. I went to architecture and I did so much sustainable development and this and that. But I think that mindset kind of limits you to that limiting resources, right? Please tell people a little bit more about that, because I think you can explain it much better than me. So
then you have to read the book one more time.
I would love to again. That's going to be on my desk.
So basically, the concept really is that sustainability has become the synonym for conservation, and you can never conserve your way out to become sustainable. That means it's only a matter of time, then actually everything becomes unsustainable. So let's assume we say we need to conserve how much air we breathe.
Yeah.
And you say, well, let's all of us stop, not breathe every minute. We're going to have 10 seconds we don't breathe. And people say, okay, fine, I can do that. And oh my God, now we really have more people. We really have to stop breathing 20 seconds every minute. And if people say, oh my God, that's really difficult, but we'll do it.
Yeah.
Now we say, oh my God, there are more people here. Now we have to stop breathing 30 seconds every minute. And people are going to say, that's not going to happen. Or what's going to be? Somewhere people are going to say, well, you just can't breathe anymore because there's so many people. My point is, it becomes, the only way we can ever create abundance is to create more of what we need, not use less of what we have. Using less is a short-term fix. Then a long-term, you have to create abundance of everything, right? abundance of energy, abundance of food, abundance of water, abundance of education, abundance of healthcare, abundance of everything we need in life, right? And then we go out and say, how do we create something that is never going to run out of resources, right? And that is where the things come in, is that, energy doesn't need to come from fossil fuel. Energy doesn't need to necessarily come from hydropower. Solar is one, wind is another, and there could be radiation that we have still yet to exploit. Do humans even need to eat food, right? We talked a little bit about that.
Sure.
What if we can fundamentally change the way that we don't need the food anymore? Then what? Right? That whole idea of we don't have enough food for people just goes away.
Right.
So my point is, it is the mindset that matters of what is possible. The concept that, the several concepts in the moonshot that I, want people to, leave is, people worry when they start something, I know nothing about this industry. And that is the biggest strength you have. The biggest strength comes because when you are an expert, you take all the foundational knowledge for granted, because you can never challenge that, because that's what makes you an expert.
Right.
And you can, if you're an expert, maybe you can change that industry 10% better, 15% better, because you're so well. But if you want to change something 10 times better or 100 times better, you have to challenge the foundation. And unless you do that, you will never be able to challenge that, right? So that is why you have to believe that as an entrepreneur, the only way to succeed is to dream that crazy idea. Dream so big that people think you're crazy. And I think, as your daughter pointed out, the fear of failure is what gets people to stop from doing it. And you have to believe that entrepreneurs never fail. Their idea may or may not work. And every idea that does not work is simply a stepping stone to a different idea and a bigger idea. And you only fail when you give up. Everything else is a pivot. You can pivot, you can adapt, but you can never give up, right? Life of an entrepreneur, in my opinion, is like a heartbeat. It goes up and down.
Yeah.
When it's smooth, you're dead. So when you find life and you're in your business, you're going smooth, you're dead. You're already dying. You want to see these ups and downs. What ups and downs means is, there are times your life is so good, and the times when you think everything is falling apart. When you are at the bottom of that beat, you just need to hunker down. Know that if you hunker down, the next beat is going to be up. When you are on the top of the beat, never get too cocky, because you know the winter is coming, and winter will come, right? And that's how you essentially survive ups and downs of life. Expect them, because when you don't expect them, you get frustrated, you get stressed. But when you expect them, you say, that's the bottom of the beat. Take a deep breath, next one is up.
That is amazing. That's great advice. So there is so much talk about how people use the power, the law of attraction, to get things in their life. Can you shed a little bit light about how much of success that people do, have in their lives is attributable to the law of attraction versus the law of action, and what role has it played for you in your life?
So essentially, you become an average of the people 5 people you surround yourself with, right? So if you surround yourself with people who believe small, people who don't believe that anything is changeable, you become one of them. When you start to change the environment and the people you surround yourself with, it opens your mind up to the possibilities that you never thought before. So the rule number 1 is to change the environment you live in if you want to change the outcome of where you want to go. Okay. If you want to dream big and do big things, surround yourself with people who are doing big things, people who think big, and that's how you become one of them. Other thing you have to always ask yourself is, are you doing it for yourself, or are you doing it to please someone, right? The minute you start to do things for someone else's approval, then you are constantly chasing your happiness, that you have given the remote control of your happiness to someone else, right? So if someone else makes you happy, then you have essentially, they control when you are happy or not happy. When you make yourself happy, you get to decide when you are happy, and you share that happiness with someone else, right? So the day you fall in love with yourself is the day the world will fall in love with you.
Okay.
That means when I say fall in love with yourself, all that means is don't look for someone's approval.
Yeah.
Right? You do things because you want to do them and you don't care what someone else think or what someone else wants. And when you get to that point, you suddenly change. When you start to measure your success, not by the amount of money you have in the bank, but you start to measure your success by the number of people whose life you have impacted, that's how you become successful. The day you become humble is the day you become successful. Because if you still have iota of arrogance left in you, that means you're still trying to prove something to yourself or someone else, and that's not a success.
Got it. That is so beautiful advice. One last thing that I always like to ask, all successful people is tell me a little bit about your morning routine and, how you start your day and what are some of the key things that you like to do in the morning.
Well, first of all, that's really a dumb question.
Okay.
And here's why it's a dumb question. Following people's habit will never make you who they are.
Okay.
Following their thought process makes you who they are.
Okay.
To example, Tony Robbins takes ice bath every morning.
Yes.
You can take an ice bath 3 times a day, you don't become Tony Robbins.
Yes.
Right? You become Tony Robbins by thinking like him, not behaving like him. So when people ask these routine habits, it has nothing, what works for me does not work for you. So you have to find how I think and find your own routine that gets you into that thinking. Not saying, I go to poop at 4 a.m. so you have to go. My point is, none of those things matters. What matters is, I jump out of the bed with joy when I wake up, whether it is 4:30 a.m. or 5 a.m.
Okay.
I wake up in the morning with gratitude of what I have, not the frustration of what I don't have.
Got it.
I go and focus every day on learning something new because I am curious about what is going on in the world. I don't go focus on learning about the industry that I am in. I want to focus on every other industry that I am not in, because when my industry is disrupted, it will rarely be someone in my industry. It will be someone on the side that's coming from totally outside the industry, challenging what we were doing, right? So for example, healthcare industry is not going to be disrupted because Merck is watching Pfizer and Pfizer is watching GlaxoSmithKline and they're watching Novartis. They are not the ones who are going to be disrupting it.
Right.
It is an idiot like me or someone in a thing is thinking, human beings are no longer physical, they have become digital. When human beings are not physical, that means now I'm able to look at digitally every molecule that's being produced in your body, and it is nothing but a math and a chemistry problem. That means it is simply about using artificial intelligence and using all the latest technology to know at a molecular level what's going on, and it becomes a big data problem. And it has nothing to do with drugs anymore. Drugs are simply, I take something, give it to 1,000 people, 200 people feel better, and they say, all right, drug is approved. What about the 800 people who are still suffering and in fact making you suffer more with the drugs are not working? Right? So this becomes a personalized solution to each person. And what if the food was the only drug you needed? Right? And that to me is how you solve these problems. And it's never the industry that you are in. So that's why the companies, people who come from outside the industry, who think of human beings as simply in math and a chemistry, and a walking, talking ecosystem, saying this problem can be solved, while every drug company is thinking, what other pill do I need? Right?
No, that's amazing.
That's really how you solve problems.
That's amazing. Well, thank you so much for today. One last thing. Is there ever going to be any land available for sale on Moon?
Well, the answer is, of course, we are all going to be living on the moon, and it's not just the land available on the moon. First of all, it is going to be wild, wild west. Person who gets there first gets to control what they have, right?
Sure.
And as people start to go there and start to develop the lands, and people are going to create value for the next people who come in. So it is no different than any new area that we move in.
Sure.
And it is always those entrepreneurs and the crazies who go there first, and then they start to make it easier for anyone else. But there is no doubt in my mind, there'll be a baby born on the moon. We're going to have a connectivity to the moon, just no different than we have a connectivity to Australia. And it takes us a whole day to go to Australia, and it may take a day or less to go to the moon. So there are going to be technology that are going to make the travel to the moon no different than us going from San Francisco to Sydney.
Wow, I would love to help you sell the moon.
Take care,
well, thank you so much for coming again.
Thank you.
It has been a pleasure.
Thanks again,
guys, for watching, and goodbye from the American Dream. Take care. Cheers.